Mark Carney's government has decided to do a 180 on LNG. Not only are they claiming that there's a big market for it, but they're saying it's all because of Justin Trudeau that it didn't happen so far. Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. One of Carney's inner circle that he conveniently took to Berlin with him after making the announcement on the capitulation to Donald Trump came out and said that there was a market for LNG and that if they had been in power in those days, it would have been a completely different thing. I guess they want us to ignore the fact that all the while behind the scenes, Mark Carney was pulling the strings, and Justin Trudeau admits that he can't even add up his grocery list. Pick this up from the CBC. Natural Resources Minister presses case for Canadian LNG exports to Europe. Tim Hodgson says he doesn't blame the Trudeau Liberals for moving in the opposite direction. All of a sudden now it's the Trudeau Liberals. Though 87% of the party that is currently sitting in the House of Commons as a Liberal were all part of the Trudeau Liberals. At a news conference wrapping up a trip in Berlin, Natural Resources Minister Tom Hodgson said German companies have told him they are interested in Canadian liquefied natural gas and his government wants to meet the demand. A reversal, a 180 from the Liberals under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. So yeah, they're trying to throw it off on Trudeau now. Any minute they're going to start throwing the debt onto Chrystia Freeland. It's despicable. There's no other word for it. I mean, I guess it could be disgusting. This behavior has absolutely no good words that we can attach to it. The previous government made its decision based on situations at the time. What we've been elected to do is respond to the realities of today, taking into account that Canadians expect from us. And I would say the realities of today are quite different than they were 2 or 3 years ago. I would read you more from the article, but I don't, like any Canadian, I don't like it when people insult my intelligence. Minister Hodgson and Mark Carney and the Liberal Party are now trying to use the CBC and the CTV and Global to convince Canadians that the change is not because they are worried about getting elected. The change is because, well, when we first made that decision, there was a lot of fuel coming out from Russia, and now Russia has made this war with Ukraine, and so obviously the need was there. The problem, of course, is that the Germans asked them for the product then, and they're asking them for the product now. And in between, the Germans have already signed another deal with Saudi Arabia to have much of this LNG brought into the country. The Americans increased the amount of LNG they're sending to Europe by 10% in 2025 alone. So if they want people on the CBC to believe that, then they can believe whatever they want. I want you and I to know the truth. The reality on the ground is that they're desperate to keep their jobs. That's all it is. And now the tactic becomes the typical Liberal federal government tactic. They're going to want to make a claim and then they're going to drag their feet and make it go as slow as possible, just like all the corporations when they try to renegotiate with unions. People are not going to accept it this time. The reality on the ground is we have always known that there's a need for LNG. And what has only been the problem is the Liberal Party. They're the ones that are in the way of it. They're the ones that are trying to stop us from manufacturing it. They're the ones that are interfering with the development of this country. They're the ones that are sending our money overseas. They're the ones that are taking all of our tax dollars and wasting it and running up debts in our name. I believe they've had 11 years to try and show us just exactly how good they are with our money, and the results speak for themselves. On top of everything else, the Europeans are laughing at us because we keep electing the Liberal Party. The world thinks we're jokes. And if you really don't believe that, then have a listen to what the ambassador to Canada from Poland said today when he was on CBC's Power and Politics.
Well, when you look at what the Americans are doing, they sent 44 million tons of LNG to Europe last year. They're obviously seeing a business case for what they're producing. Is Poland interested in Canada's natural resources and LNG in particular? Is that something that you would like to see advance as these two countries get closer together?
Yeah. Well, remember, some of that LNG that is coming from United States to Europe, to Poland, is also Canadian LNG. But it's being sold for a much higher price, I would say, than when it would come from Canada. Yes, we are constantly interested. We would like the Canadian LNG market to open to Europe. We would like to see the Canadian gas flowing to the east coast on Canada, and the Canadian gas flowing in European pipelines.
Now, if any of you out there have even a rudimentary understanding of the way the Eastern European speaks, you would have saw when he was talking about how we sell it to the Americans and the Americans sell it to them at an enormous profit, you would have seen a man just holding himself back from calling us fools. Because he sees that we sell it to the Americans and the Americans make a buttload of money by selling it into Europe when we could be selling it ourselves directly into Europe. Then he went on to say Poland has a constant need. So what you want me to believe, Mr. Carney and MP Hodgson, is that the need for Poland to have LNG, this constant supply, has only arisen in the last 36 months? That's astounding in my mind. I don't believe that for 1 second. I believe that when the Germans came to Canada and said, hey, can we have some of your LNG? And then said to Canadians, there's no market for LNG and let's just leave it all in the ground because that way there we can virtue signal to the world, who are all pointing their finger and laughing and giving buttloads of money to other countries that have LNG, by the way. I believe there was a need then and there's still a need now. And of course, I don't for 1 second believe that the calculations were made by Justin Trudeau. Not even a little bit. I mean, he says to you right from the microphone, he said more than one time that math is hard for him, that he has some sort of a blockage. I'm not trying to make fun of him, but I am absolutely trying to point to the fact that there's no way in the world that they came to Justin Trudeau and he sat down with all of their business proposal and made the decision on his own, that he took a look at all the markets and made it. No, come on now. I think if we were to ask Justin Trudeau, he would tell us the truth on who actually made the decision on that and who was pulling his strings. Of course, he might not want to admit that just yet. Might come out in his memoirs or something like that. Obviously, the European wants a market for us. And of course, we have the other problem coming forward from the Liberal Party where now they want to say, oh, no. Because remember, you'll hear Mark Carney say there's short and medium term solutions. And of course, now they're saying, oh, no, we can have a pipeline into Churchill within the next 7 years. But don't worry, from now we could ship LNG from the British Columbian coast over to Europe. Oh, you can't make it up. I picked this up from Politico. LNG could flow from Canadian Arctic port to Europe in about 5 to 7 years, the minister estimates. It will probably take about 5 to 7 years for Canadian liquefied natural gas to be ready to flow to Europe from an Arctic port, Canada's Energy Minister Tom Hodgson told Politico. The idea is to build a pipeline that funnels LNG from Western Canada to a port on the country's northeast coast like Churchill. From there, it would be shipped to Europe from a terminal that is yet to be constructed. I think you're probably talking 5 to 7 years, Hodgson said in an interview in Berlin Wednesday after talks with 4 LNG suppliers and multiple German companies. 4 LNG suppliers and multiple companies, and they all arrived to this conclusion in the last 36 months. That's what you're trying to make me believe, that not only is Poland just got there in the last 36 months, the entire country and all the industry inside of Poland, but so is all of the industry and all of the companies inside of Germany. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that Germany signed a deal for LNG to come out of Saudi Arabia. So Germany is also not meeting this, the supply that it requires. Let's not forget that a lot of LNG is used in agriculture as well, right? So there's a big need for it everywhere you turn. What we needed was a government who understands that. See, the Hodgson talks this way and they make these announcements, but what they want you to do is that as long as you include the Liberal Party, they'll tell you, well, we will suspend all of these horrible economic policies that we have. We will suspend all of the anti-pipeline and horrendous legislation that we've written. If you just include us, if you just give us the control of your future like you have up to now, because up to now it's worked out so well for Canadians. We don't need the Liberal government. We don't need the federal government. Like Pierre Poilievre told you, you cut the bills that are laid down by the federal government, some of which the Liberal government is still in court with Alberta over, by the way, coming before the Supreme Court. You destroy all that legislation, you rescind it, then you get out of the way. Then all of a sudden, people who work with oil and people who know how to hire people to build pipelines and people who know how to hire people to build better deep water ports, more secure, and most importantly, the infrastructure required to move it all along the magnetic levitation that I have telling you is the best solution for this, because I understand, having been up into this part of the country, what the environment looks like. I understand the topography. I know what it looks like. There's a lot of swamp. And you can't go laying mile after mile of steel bedded train. You got to drop so many tons of gravel down in there, but magnetic levitation runs on pilings. So you only have to do little spots. Anyway, I'll get to that at a different time, but all of these things are required. So when he says to you 5 to 7 years, that's just unrealistic. We would have to start right now, and if we're lucky, we probably could send out a couple of loads within 3 to 5 years. But to have it up and running to where it's like, wow, this is a great system and we are making a lot of money and everybody is happy, I would say closer to 10. Because we have a lot of logistical concerns. I mean, you want to put in a deep water port with an LNG terminal in it, great. And then you figure how you're going to get everybody there. And then the people that are building it might not want to live there. They might not want to work on it because they're construction and they're not necessarily oil and gas men or welders or all of the things that go along with that. They're not necessarily seafarers. They're not necessarily people who work on icebreakers. So there's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to go up around this type of port. Now, I have told you all, Churchill's the greatest solution. Churchill is in Manitoba. So now we can pull money and investment and we can pull development out of Ontario where we put everybody, or southern Quebec or southern British Columbia, and spread the population out. Let's get some development going on in the entire country. Plus, Churchill is a port that's owned by a conglomerate of First Nations individuals. So that will spread some money up to that way. On top of the fact that once we can build a maglev that far, we can build it even further into the north and get those guys off of the airplanes and onto magnetic levitation, where instead of taking them 4 days to have to go and get their groceries, they can be done and back within a day. And again, I know I'm digressing, but it's not just about one little thing like the Liberal Party wants to make you understand. You have to see the entire picture. And if you don't see the entire picture, you're doomed to failure. If all of a sudden you say, yeah, let's get shovels in the ground, let's go ahead and build this port, but you don't understand that the railway to get up there is really rickety at best. In fact, it was just rebuilt because there was a whole bunch of it that fell apart, that you have to understand that you're going to be coming along with this pipeline. And perhaps in some places it might be easier to leave the pipeline elevated, and then we have to consider how to build that differently. So there's lots of things to factor in here, more than just, oh yeah, don't worry about it, Canada, vote for us. Now, Hodgson in another article mentions how he believes they can send LNG out of British Columbia, which I can't even believe how tone deaf that guy was to say that. And we know about the tanker ban. We understand that all of a sudden the Liberal government doesn't want anybody in an oil tanker coming into British Columbia waters at all. And this guy says that. However, there are people that occupy the First Nations in that particular part of British Columbia who have different thing to say. I got this article from Energy Now. I'll leave a link in the description. Indigenous communities shut out by BC tanker ban want another chance. From the outset, projects must unite leadership from proponents, governments, and affected First Nations. The head of the National Coalition of Chiefs is calling for a repeal of the oil tanker ban on BC's north coast as Canada seeks nation-building projects to strengthen economic independence. With short shipping times to hungry Asian markets, port like Prince Rupert or Kitimat offer strong business cases, but only if the tankers can dock. You see, they can't even dock, right? And every market is hungry. What we have is something that the whole wide world wants, and because the ideologically driven Liberals, no proponent is going to look at investing in a pipeline in the North Coast with the kind of legislation in place, says NCC founder and CEO Dale Swampy. Formed in 2016, the NCC is a group of pro-development First Nations leaders, including some who were equity partners in the cancelled Northern Gateway pipeline from Edmonton to Kitimat. Canada's Indigenous communities need projects, not lawsuits, that hold them up, he says. Now, I'll leave a link to the article. You should go look at it. But there's one comment I just want to say here. 31 of the 40 nations of First Nations and Métis communities here are located along the Northern Gateway's right-of-way, supported the pipeline. But a couple of communities backed by environmental groups were able to stop the entire project. 31 out of 40. And I'm sure if we had another closer look, we would see that it's probably closer to 36 out of 40. I say that because I'm willing to believe that at least half of the people that voted against the pipeline have changed their position after 11 years of this Liberal government. The thing we need to point to is that this is simply one project, and how do we put it together? Well, we give people jobs. And understand that that's what we're after here. People are not trying to get, they don't want to all be oil men or oil people. They don't want to all be like living Yeah, it would be great, but that's not what they think of when they think about it. They're thinking, man, I could have my own car, maybe get my own house, and my children would live a decent life, and I would be able to buy those shoes I've always wanted, and I would be able to buy that canoe I've always wanted, and I would be able to spend my life going to work all week and then spending the weekends doing things that I like to do. Then start the whole process over again. And then I know that there's so much work there that my children will have jobs as well. So now we're talking generational work. We're talking the blue collar dream. And that's really what Canadians want. Most of the world, I'll be honest with you. I mean, their choices are the uber rich, dirt poor, or the middle class. The blue collar dream is what the world should look like. I mean, in my utopia, that's all we see is miles and miles and miles of blue collar dream. Everybody got their own little stuff. Nobody's too worried about too much. Everything is happy. Everything flows smoothly. Crime is down. Prosperity is up, and so on and so forth. And for most of the people, I believe that what I'm saying is a vision they can get on board with. Of course, you'll hear Mark Carney change his tune any day now, and he'll start talking about a pipeline into Montreal because he's desperately going to need to keep the Quebec on his side. He's going to lose them no matter what happens because the second that he signs that deal with Donald Trump, the Americans are going to be flooding the market, and that's going to send the French francophone of the Liberal Party into chaos. We cannot put the pipeline into the port of Montreal because they already have too much infrastructure down there. We need to spread these jobs out. We need to spread our people out so that the Liberal government can stop screaming at me about high density. We don't need high density if everybody's spread out. We, in fact, need quite the opposite. And if we tell people that all you got to do is come up into the woods for a little while and we will build up these things and we will make these things and you can build yourself a house right there on this piece of property that you can have at a fairly decent price, and don't worry about it because we have the magnetic levitation. We can get fresh fruit from Winnipeg up here in under 4 hours. So it won't be that much more expensive to live. And here's a greenhouse that you can grow some of your own tomatoes, cucumbers, and all the things that people like to grow. Next thing you know, you'll have people banging down the door to come up there and do the job so that they can have that kind of payout. If you build it, they will come. That's from that movie with Kevin Costner, The Field of Dreams. Well, I'm telling you that's what we got to be adopting in this particular position. Once we have the first railway put in, we can see that it works. We can see what doesn't work. We can see what functions. And then we can begin to duplicate that across the continent, across the country, at least, which is, essentially the top half of the continent. And we will be able to tie in the Yukon. We will be able to tie in Whitehorse. We will be able to tie in all of the major rural areas, allowing our people to have spread out, have prosperity in other places. All blue collar jobs, all nice little houses, all decent education, all good internet, all good electricity, because everybody forgets, but a magnetic levitation is electric. So you bring the electricity with you, and everywhere there is one, you can just shoot right off of it, and you spread that electricity right out across the continent. So if you look at it from on high, and if you do it correctly, which I don't believe the Liberal government has the capability of doing, even if they were to take this video and try to copy everything that I just said, I'm fairly certain that they wouldn't be able to pull it off. They have too much control issues. Like, that's one thing for sure. It seems to be a very prevalent situation on the far left. They have to be in absolute control all the time, and they're very touchy on how you talk to them. So those two things alone are going to cause a little bit of problems. However, they don't have the if they had the vision, they would already have done it, right? If they had the economic foresight, they would already be taking care of that. Instead, they're going the other way. They're trying to be like, okay, let's just cram everybody into these high rises and we'll make people live with their small children 600 feet into the air or whatever it may be. And if we're really good, you can have a building that's built right on top of a subway station, so you never really have to go outside at all. I mean, that's the kind of future that the Liberal government has in our, it seems to be laid out for the Canadian population. And we have fanatics running all through our cabinet. Like, we have De Bruzen, we have Guilbeault, and even Mark Carney, if you read his book, Values, is he's a carbon fanatic. He's just as bad as Guilbeault. I mean, the three of them are, identical when it comes to the kind of fanaticism and the short-sightedness and the narrow-mindedness that goes along with people that occupy the left. Now, I don't tell you that he didn't win the election properly. All I'm saying to you is that if you want to have prosperity, if you want to have a good job for you, not only you, but all the people you know, we have all the things we need except the political will, right? We have everything we need. It's all there. All we got to do is remove the people who are in the way through the democratic system, say, get out of the way. Thank you very much for your time. have a nice day. And then Canadians can get down to work. And by the time we get this up and running, it's a full generation of people who will have no end of work. And we will all of a sudden, between us and the Americans, we will be a beacon to the rest of the planet to show them how to get it done. Now, you might tell yourself that it sounds grandiose and you might tell yourself that it sounds like a fantasy, but I'm telling you that all we got to do is try and it will work. If we build it, they will come. I'm going to wrap here. I would encourage you all to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.